Okay guys, let's talk about a really easy trick to installing this cooler without having to use the kind of goofy backplate that Raijintek has and actually using the AMD's backplate. Now, this is of course something that you have to do at your own risk because, you know, it's not official manufacturing stuff, but it's not complicated. So as you know, a lot of coolers don't use AMD's backplate. Well, in the case of this Orcus motherboard, there is a plate on the back that does not allow a big square bracket to fit. So Raijintek includes this guy, and as you can see, we got two things. So for one, it's going to hit that shielding on the back, and two, that's a lot of open space to allow bowing. So it's actually really simple. If you guys can find some screws about that length and make sure that they're the same thread that fits into the AMD backplate, what ends up happening is these little risers that Raijintek has, they kind of fit loosely on the screw. So these things will almost slide over. I mean, they kind of catch the threads, but not really. And so what happens is once you get this guy into place, you can see here, I left a little bit of slack here. I can stick that piece down on there, and then the screw will kind of just push through it a little bit, and it gets a little bit caught, but it just barely catches those threads. And so if I can get that piece up on there on that, just get everything up there on the AMD bracket, I can just start screwing this thing in, and it'll just kind of push right through. And then once the threads catch into the back plate for the motherboard, just screws right in. So once we do that, we will have a really good step in the right direction towards installing this CPU cooler. Raijintek also has the control box. So it's got a port there that if you want to use motherboards to control it, you can. But it's also got a switch so that you can choose to use the remote on the box to control it. And as you can see, we've got 8 lighting ports that we can use to control that. Now, unfortunately, though, these ports are going to be a little proprietary to Raijintek. So once we get this guy in place here, bam, you can just plug it in and we'll be able to control all the lightings like so. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. Unfortunately, this guy does have a Molex power connection, which I find to be a slight bummer because I'd prefer that to have been SATA. Once you get down to the pump and stuff, we've got just a typical 3-pin connection for the pump power, and then the fans have typical 4-pin PWM control for controlling the fans. So there we go. Let's go ahead and finish getting this cooler installed. Alrighty, there we go. Yeah, there's only one little minor step that I'd like to see changed. These mounting screws here that attach the block at the final step, they're not attached to the block itself, so you kind of have to float them in there and just kind of line them up. It's not a big deal, it's not super hard to do, but it'd be kind of nice if there's just like a little tiny ring or something that would attach those screws to the block, just make it a little easier. But I mean, that's kind of a minor nitpick because overall this install process was pretty easy. Alright guys, let's take a look at this Raijintek cooler and let's see what kind of color options it has. As you can see right now, I'm using just a solid purple color because that fits well with the scheme I'm using in my computer, but we have way more options than that. Now you can choose to sync this whole thing to a header on your motherboard. Make sure you use one of the 5-volt addressable headers. Do not use a 12-volt one because you can damage the LEDs and components in there. But the good news is that if you don't have a motherboard that has the header on there, you can use Raijintek's control box. The control box is controlled by this remote. So it's pretty simple, straightforward. There isn't a whole lot of options here. If we press these buttons here, you can go white, red, green, or blue as defaults. If you click auto, it just does a color cycle pattern. You can see that in the background there. You can, we'll go through the modes here in a second. You can change the speeds on there. And so we can slow that cycle pattern down, or we can speed it back up so that's going through pretty quickly there. So there you can actually see now we've got that kind of spectrum wave going through the fans as well as on the flow meter here, and that looks really nice. Now let's go ahead and look through these modes here. And so this is where we start seeing that addressable RGB headers coming into play. So that's kind of a fun way to do that. Then we got more of a kind of a clunky, it's just kind of shifting over, but it's just giving you different options. And then they changed actual color cycles, just various different kinds of modes that we can do here. So I'm going to keep just clicking through these, letting you guys take a look at them. And I might even throw a little bit of background music on there to help us get through the light show. Alright guys, so now that we're hitting these solid colors here, we're pretty much to the end of this. So there isn't a ton of options to choose from, but there's a pretty solid amount. Once we get past this white, we get back to the beginning and we're at that color spectrum wave. So there's a decent number of options there. Of course, with addressable headers, you can do a lot of options, which is nice. I like to have my purple scheme to match my build, so it looks great. This is a nice solid option from Raijintek. I have seen some controllers that have more options, but hey, considering what we're getting with this cooler, I think that is a really good job on the lighting. All right guys, I'm gonna leave this as a standalone here, so if you wanna check out my quick review with the performance, I'll have that video in the description below, as well as in some of the tiles and things that we can pop up at the end of the video here. You can check that out, and I will catch you later.